In this video, I'm going to explain what different pre-cuts are and how you can use them in your projects. Hi, I'm Katie, a modern quilter, and I love talking all things sewing. So let's dive into quilting pre-cuts explained. So there are a variety of pre-cuts available to you at your local quilt shop or online, and you may not know what they are or what size pieces of fabric you're going to be getting, so I thought I'd do a little explanation for you. So starting from the smallest, working our way to the largest pre-cuts available out there, you have your mini charm pack. So this is going to be a 2.5-inch square by fabric, and typically there'll be about 42 pieces in each charm pack. And that way you get a variety of fabrics from a fabric line, but just be prepared for any of these pre-cuts. Typically you'll get a couple of repeat fabrics from a fabric line just to fill out those 42 pieces. So with the 2.5-inch pre-cuts, I like to use these for English paper piecing. So typically if you're doing some hand sewing and you're making hexagons that you might sew onto a larger project, say like a throw pillow, that's something that I would like to do, or what I like to use these for. Other items you can use it for are going to be small patchwork items. So maybe a pouch that you want to do a quilted pouch and make it patchwork looking, you could use these, and they're going to be showcasing a variety of fabrics and they look adorable on a pouch. Moving up to our next size is going to be a charm pack. So this is 5 inches square all the way around. Typically, once again, they come in the 42-inch variety pack, so that way you get the full line from a specific designer, and then you'll get 42 pieces about. Just always make sure, typically in the description or on the packaging itself, it will say on the back 42 cuts. Even on the front here it says 42 pieces, so that way you can make sure if you're following a certain pattern, you get the appropriate number of pieces that you're looking for. This one's a little bit larger. This is a 100 count because it has all the solid fabrics from a Kona cotton line. With this one, I typically like to use the 5-inch charm packs as about a foundation piece block. So if I wanted to make a bunch of half square triangles and just make a really standard or modern looking half square triangle quilt, that way I don't have to do all the pre-cuts. I can just use say a white background along with all these colors, and then I get 2 half square triangles for each charm that I'm using from there. Moving up, this is a 10-inch square. So with this, you'll get, it's also commonly called a layer cake through Moda, but this is 10 inches square. Once again, 42 pieces is pretty standard. I like to use these for some of the a lot of quilt patterns do call out for this in the modern quilting world. One of my favorite designers, also a friend of mine, Emily Dennis over at Quilty Love, she has a lot of her quilt patterns call out for layer cakes. So I'm a big fan of pre-cuts because there's less amount of cutting that I have to do on the front end, and it means I get straight to sewing, which is always the fun part for me. Once again, 42 pieces there. It's going to be a variety of the fabrics in the line. You might get some duplicates, but that's pretty standard when it comes to any of the pre-cuts here. Next up, we have what's commonly called a jelly roll. These are going to be 2.5 inches wide, and they are the full width of fabric. So I've had some that I cut for a project recently for my formation quilt pattern. So you'll see it's going to be folded in half, just like you're typically off the bolt, and then it'll be in a 2.5-inch width, and then going to about anywhere from 40 to 45 inches depending on the manufacturer. So I always take a look at those descriptions. Once you start sewing quite a bit, you'll get a handle of what manufacturers you like to use from, whether it's Moda, Robert Kaufman, RJR, Birch, Riley Blake. I could go on and on, Figo Fabrics, but just make sure that you take a look when it comes to your quilt pattern that you're using, that you are going to make sure you get the proper width when it comes to what they call out there. So that is a jelly roll. There's also a smaller one called a honey bun that's offered through Moda Fabrics. That's a 1.5-inch strip roll. The nice thing with the jelly rolls is that they're 2.5 inches wide, which typically is what you use for a binding. So that way, if you want to always have, say, a black binding, a white binding, or if you find a full print of, whether it's solids or just a specific print, you can just go ahead and start sewing your binding up and then get right to pressing versus having to cut your binding and then going ahead and starting the process. Next up, this is going to be a fat 1/8 bundle. Super cute, right? They're a little bit cheaper, more cost effective than going the full route of maybe a fat 1/4 bundle. But fat 1/8 bundles are going to be 9 inches by 22 inches. So think of rolling off the bolt. You'll cut a 9-inch width if you're working at the quilt chop there, and then you cut that in half. So it's 9 inches by 22 inches. That's going to be a fat 1/8. All right, and so let me just show you what that looks like folded out here. Once again, if you're getting a bundle, typically we'll have the majority of the prints depending on the fabric line, but will be what a fat 1/8 looks like. All right, and then moving up to one of the last ones, this is going to be a fat quarter. A fat quarter is going to be 18 inches by 22 inches, 20 to 22 inches. Once again, once you're rolling off the bolt, you're going to be cutting that 18 inches width and then cutting it right on the fold there to give you that fat 1/8. So here's one. There are a lot of fat quarter bundles. Sorry if I misspoke there. Fat quarter is 18 by 22. There are a lot of fat quarter bundles that are sold from the designers, but also a lot of quilt shops, a lot of online quilt shops, they like to curate fat quarter bundles, whether it's a mix of solids and prints, to make their own fat quarter bundles available to you. I would say when it comes to quilt patterns, if that's what you're doing, a lot of patterns and designers will utilize fat quarter bundles because I gotta say, there's something that pulls any quilter or shopper or even fabric collectors to the fat quarter bundle, just because they're so beautiful when they're on the shelf and they make for, beautiful looking storage while you're waiting to use them up. But that is a very popular pre-cut in the quilting world. I would say between layer cuts, layer cakes, and fat quarters, those are going to be your most go-to for quilt pattern designers. My friend Emily, she makes fabulous quilt patterns for both of these over at quiltylove.com. I would say kitchen table quilting, she makes a ton of designs that utilize fat 1/8 bundles. And then jelly rolls, you can find loads and loads of free quilt patterns available online that uses jelly rolls or charm packs. So from here, hopefully this gives you all the information you need to know to shop wisely, shop carefully, and fully grasp the concept of what pre-cuts are. And I'll see you in the next video where I'll be making a quilt as you go scrappy Holland pouch.